arcade guns like guns using MAME. Um, Basically, we start by
Press OK. Press OK. The last thing you have to do is set up your controller. So you're going to go to config, press OK. The last thing you have to do is set up your controller. So you're going to go to config, and then you're going to go to controls, and then click on Joy 1. And right here, what you're going to do is bind your keyboard or controller to the keys that would be on a Dreamcast controller. So you can click on this left trigger here and hit whichever button on your keyboard or controller you'd like to be the left trigger, and then do the same thing for the rest of the buttons on this menu. You can ignore the right column. Then press OK, and before we completely exit out, we're going to want to go down to Save State and assign a button for that. I use F1, and Load State I use F3, and for Next State I use F2. And this way you can make it and load save states. Then press OK. If you want, you can also beef up your graphics a little bit. Just keep in mind that this may cause graphical glitches in some games, so if you're experiencing that in a game you're playing, you might want to reverse the process that we just did right here. So you can go to config, and then you can go to plugins and paths. You go to video plugin, select the one that says old, press OK, go back to config, then click on video. In here, you can turn up the internal resolution of the console. I like to turn it up to about 4. Remember, the higher you go, the more resource intensive it is. You can turn on VSync if you'd like. I'm going to leave that on. You can add a shader pass. I like FXAA, but it's really a preference thing. And the other thing you can do is change the Windows resolution, which will make the play window bigger for you. And after you've done whatever you'd like, you can just click OK. And now all you have to do is load a game. And the way you do that is by going to config, and then you go down to GD-ROM, you hit select, and then pick a game from the area that your games are stored on your computer, press OK, go to File, and then run Dreamcast. And now you can play Dreamcast games on your PC. And remember, if your game is graphically glitched, all you have to do is go back to plugins and paths and change your video setting back to the other one. So I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If it helped, be sure to like and subscribe. I got a bunch of other content on emulation you might find useful as well. Until the next time, you guys have a good... And then you're going to go to...
Somebody turn off the light, please. I want that shit, no excuses. Yeah, we just talked to me, we just take the shit.
until you get this menu here, okay? Now, once you get this menu, you want to go down to, actually you can stay on input general and go ahead and press enter with that highlighted, and go down to player 1 controls and press enter again. There's only a few things we're configuring in here, okay? So let's do gun 1 first. So get gun 1, make sure gun 2 is out of the way and it's not pointing at the screen, and go ahead and go down to player 1 button 1. Okay, now when you do this, you want to keep the gun very, very steady, because any movement is going to register when you're trying to configure these inputs. So what I like to do for this first one is I lay the gun flat, very still, and then I go and highlight P1 button 1, hit enter, and squeeze the trigger very slowly so that it only registers that. Now, see there, the gun 1 button 0 and gun 1 Y plus. That's no good. That it registered the axis. So what you can do is hit enter, escape to clear it out, make it none, and then go ahead and hit enter again. Try to squeeze the trigger one more time. There you go, that took perfectly. Gun 1 B0, that's what you want to see. Alright, and it doesn't have to be gun 1, it doesn't have to be B0, but you want it to say gun 1, gun 2, gun 3, whatever it is, you want it to say gun a number and then button 0. It's probably going to be button 0, but the gun number could change. Okay, now those of you with the newer update should see just gun 1. Anybody with the older version, the gun number could change. Okay, so now we program player 1 button 1. Now we're going to go to player 1 button 2. Now button 2 is the left red button right here on the gun. Alright, so again, keep it very steady, hit enter on that input and press that button. Now again, that didn't register properly because it's saying a bunch of stuff there, so we're going to hit enter, escape to clear it out, hit enter again, and try that again. Okay, that's perfect. Joy 1 button 1. It only registered one input, which is what you want. Now go to player 1 button 3. Now we're going to do the right side red button. So lay it flat again, hit enter on that, press that button, and there you go, it took that time perfectly. So we're good there. Alright, now I'm gonna scroll all the way up so it takes us all the way to the bottom. Okay, now we're here. So we're gonna go up to add stick X analog. Okay, so that is going to be your X axis, and then we're going to do the Y axis after that. Okay, so I'm gonna press enter on that, and I'm gonna move the gun. Whoops, see it didn't take properly, so again, clear it out. This one you want to be very steady, so go ahead and move your gun. It still didn't take. Okay, so now I took the gun 1Y, which we don't want. So we're going to press enter again. Okay, it still didn't take. Again, you have to try this a few times until you get it right. So I'm just going to keep trying it. Okay, there you go. So gun 1X, that's what you want. Alright, now I'm going to go to gun Y analog, and I'm going to press enter again, and this time we're moving it up and down. Okay, so it took gun Y. Up and down is a lot easier than side to side, so it took that one right away. Alright, so obviously the X analog is going to be left to right, Y is going to be up and down. Now you want to do the exact same thing for light gun X analog and light gun Y analog. So we did, before we did add stick, now we're going to do light gun X analog. So I'm going to press enter, move it side to side, and it took that time right away. And you get better with practice once you do this a few times. So we're going to go down to light gun Y analog, I'm going to move it up and down, and there you go. Now remember that the gun number could be different for you. That depends on how Windows assigns the USB ID to your gun. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is that the gun number could be different. As long as you have gun and some sort of number, and X and Y is what you care about. Okay? So once you do this, you're good to go. We programmed the trigger, both of the red buttons, and we programmed the X and Y axes for both add stick and light gun. Alright, so you're done there. You can go to previous menu, return to previous menu, hit enter, and now you can move on to player 2. Put this gun away, point it away from the screen, go to player 2 and do the exact same thing with the other gun. So we're going to do the trigger first. See, that didn't take properly, so clear it out. Do it again. There it is. Now the left button took fine, and the right button, put around. And take, so clear it out. There you go, that took perfectly, so I'm going to go all the way up so it takes us to the bottom. Let's do the add stick X. There, it took perfectly. Let's do the Y. Let's do the X again, side to side. There you go, let's do up and down. And that's it. So once you do that, both guns are completely configured. Now let's go ahead and do return to previous menu, return to previous menu again. Let's do return to machinery. Now, once you get this mix,
I'll run through that quick here. Got the wheel hooked up and ready.
Alright, so you're trying to play Golden Tee and your trackball isn't working. What to do? Pretty simple. You're going to press tab on the keyboard. You're going to leave it on input general. You're going to press enter. You're going to go down to player 1 controls using the down arrow on the keyboard. You're going to press up arrow to go down to the bottom of the list. And you're going to keep going up until you reach track Y analog. You're going to press enter and you're going to move the mouse or the trackball up and down. Okay, that's what you want to see. You want to see mouse, a number, and Y. If you make a mistake and you do something like this, you can always just hit the delete key to get back to none. So I'm going to press enter again, and I'm going to move my trackball up and down. Alright, now I'm going to press the up arrow again, and I'm going to go to track X analog and do the same thing. Enter, and move side to side for that one. And that's all you have to do. Now, let me show you how to do the spinner. You're going to just go up to the dial analog, again, hit enter, and just turn your spinner. That's all you have to do. I don't have the spinner connected right now, so I'm just going to cancel out. And I'm going to go down arrow. And I'm going to select return to previous menu, enter. And I'm going to return to previous menu again. And I'm going to go down to return to machine, and I'm going to hit enter again. And once you're in here, you can just go ahead and test the trackball, and everything should work just fine. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
Optic blast.
Once it comes up, you're going to press tab, then select input general. Then you're going to go to user interface, and you're going to look for UI cancel. You're going to press enter, and then you press the button you want to exit out of main. Then you're going to go to return to previous menu, select player 1 controls, and map your up, down, left, right, and your buttons just by pressing enter and pressing the key. Then you're going to go to player 1 start and map a button for that as well. Then you got to scroll all the way down to the bottom and say return to previous menu. Then you're going to select other controls Then you're going to map a player 1 start button again, and then a coin 1 button as well. Then return to previous menu, return to previous menu, and then return to game. Now you're going to give it a test. Okay, now that you know that your joystick works and your button works, you can go ahead and exit out of MAME. Once it comes up,
Gonna run through that quick here. Got the wheel hooked up and ready to go. I'm just gonna go into a simple game here to configure, and that's pole position. Pole position is a good one to start out on just to get your bearings, because it only has the shift function and it only has the gas and the brake pedal, no special nitrous buttons or anything like that. So this same video applies whether or not you're configuring any other more complicated driving game, but I figured I'd start with pole position here. So I'm gonna get it back on that. Goes into a screensaver here, but I'm just gonna arrow back up to pole position and load it up here. And I'll show you how to configure the wheel. So once the game loads up, we're going to get into our in-game menu, and we're going to do that by holding down the one-player start and pushing right on the one-player joystick. Now we're going to go down to input this game. Now this only applies to this game. If you go into input general, you're setting settings for everything on the machine. So most times you're going to go into input this game if you just want to customize that single game. So I'm going to go in there and hit the third button on the second player, which is our enter button. And we're going to go down to where it says gear change here, because I want to set that up first just to use the paddle shifters on the wheel itself. So if I go ahead and I highlight that and I clear it out, I'm going to go ahead and push the paddle shifter here on the right, and it's going to come up and it's going to assign that. The steering wheel just comes up as a joystick in our systems. It's an analog joystick, just the same as you would with an analog joystick that you'd play other games with, but the steering wheel is the same type of controller. We're going to go down to where it says pedal 1 analog. And pedal 1 is always the gas pedal, pedal 2 is always the brake pedal, at least everything I've ever seen. We're going to go ahead and clear that out, and we're just going to push the gas pedal down. And you can't see that, but I'm just pushing the gas pedal down on the floor here on the pedals, and it's going to input our y-axis there. And then we're going to go to pedal 1 decrease. Now you got to imagine that if we want to decrease pedal 1, we're actually going to be pushing the brake pedal. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that out, and I'm going to push the brake pedal down. And it's going to assign that to down. Doesn't really matter, but as long as it has an input there. Then we're going to go to pedal 1 analog increase, and that's of course when we push the gas pedal down, it's going to increase it. So we want to clear that out, and we want to push the gas pedal, and you'll see it says join 1 up. Okay, now pedal 2 analog, we're going to enter that in as a function. So we're going to push the brake pedal. Pedal 2 is always the brake pedal, and we're going to go to pedal 2 analog decrease. So that means when I want to increase the brake pedal, I'm going to push the gas pedal. So I'm going to push that down here after clearing it out, and then I'm going to arrow down to pedal 2 analog increase. And when I want to increase the brake pedal, I'm going to clear that out and I'm going to push the brake pedal. Okay, now our dial analog is actually what controls the game, the steering wheel. So we're going to highlight that, clear it out, and we're just going to move the wheel to the right or to the left just slightly. And it's going to come up with our x-axis. So basically the x-axis controls the steering, the y-axis is our pedals. All right, and for the dial analog decrease and increase, you don't have to enter anything there. It automatically sets that up. So I'm going to go return to prior menu, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to analog controls. Now, analog controls in analog type games, you won't find these in Pac-Man and Frogger and anything that uses just digital control. But analog control applies to games that use an analog function, whether it's steering, whether it's shooting, just about anything that uses a trackball, the spinner, or the steering wheel here. So what I want to do, the two things that are interesting to me here are going to be the dial reverse. Now, if you're controlling a game where you want the steering wheel to do the opposite, opposite direction that you're going to turn it. So if I turn it to the right, it's going to go to the left. Say if you're playing like a flight simulator or something like that, you might want to set that up. But what we're looking for is the dial sensitivity here. Now, you can see it's set to 3, and this is a scale from 0 to 100. But because most of our steering wheels are very sensitive, we usually keep this down in the 2 to 3 to 4 range. And you can play with it. If it's too sensitive, turn it down. If it's overly if it's not sensitive enough, turn it up. So, and just changing it a few numbers. So if I change it from 3 to 6 is going to make it twice as sensitive. So we're going to start at 3 here, which is pretty much the factory defaults. And another one that might be interesting to you is the dial digital speed. And all this does is the game reads this steering wheel and where it's setting at every 10 times a second. Now, if you turn this up even higher, it's going to make it more sensitive. You turn it down real low, it's only going to read it, say 5 times a second. or 20 times, whatever you set it at, really doesn't make that much of a difference. The one we're really concerned about is the sensitivity. But if you do want to play with the digital speed, you can do that. Now the rest of the functions on here really don't apply much, but you can play around with them if you want to kind of customize. Obviously pedal 1 sensitivity is going to be the brake pedal sensitivity, so if we set it at 100, as soon as I touch the brake just a little bit, it's going to be full brake. If you don't like that, if you want it to take a little bit more travel before it kicks in, you're going to turn this down. And you can just do that by moving the joystick to the left or to the right. So we're going to leave this one at 3, but I'll show you the difference. I don't know if you'll be able to tell in the video so much, but in playability with your machine, you'll be able to tell the difference when you turn that sensitivity up or down. So I'm going to return to prior menu, I'm going to return to the game, I'm going to credit it up, and I'm going to start a game here and I'll show you how it works. Alright, turn it up a little bit for you. I'm here to hit the gas here, and I can hit the shift, and then you hear it shift up, shift down, and I can steer to the left or to the right. Now if this feels too sensitive for you, what we can do is we can stop, and you can just leave the game run, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to get back into our menu, and I'm going to go into analog controls, and I'm going to go all the way down to the dial sensitivity, or the wheel sensitivity, and I'm going to turn it down. Let's just turn it down to 1. And that's the lowest it goes. Let's see what it does. And it might be hard for you to tell just on the video, but if you had the machine, I've got to turn the wheel considerably more now to be able to turn that same direction. And you can set it however you want. You can either have it, real sensitive, less sensitive. I actually prefer less sensitive because I like a lot more travel in the wheel. But that's basically how you set it up. So again, just going into input this game, configuring all your controls just like we went through, and then return to prior menu, go down to analog controls, and there you can get in and change the sensitivity and the amount of times that the machine actually reads the joystick's position, or the wheel's position. Enjoy! Get the wheel hooked up and ready.
Now as you Now, as you would expect to map your pedal, you just press tab, go to input this machine, highlight the pedal you want, pedal 1 for the gas in this case, press enter, and then press the appropriate pedal. So I'm going to unpause the game, and let's see what happens. You notice I'm not touching either of the pedals, and it's actually starting to slowly accelerate on its own. Not at full speed, but it's definitely going. The reason is because we mapped the entire Z axis. And you remember back in Windows that when you're not touching any of the pedals, it's actually the same as if you were pushing it down 50% of the way. So what we need to do is separate these pedals in MAME, and I will show you how to do that. So I'm going to go back into my mapping section, and let's start over with pedal 1 here. I press enter, I press the pedal, I get Joy 1 Z axis, which I don't want. I'm going to press enter again, press the pedal again. Now it says Joy 1 Z axis plus. So it's only going to take the plus section of the Z axis. But if you remember in Windows, the brake was actually the top half, so that's actually the plus. So I'm going to press enter one last time, press the pedal again, and now Joy 1 Z axis minus is mapped to pedal 1. And back in the game, I unpause it, nothing's happening. I press the brake, nothing happens. I press the gas, and here we go, accelerating at full speed, and works as it should. And then I'll go back in, I'll just map the brake to the Z-axis plus, and then everything will work fine. So that's how you deal with these combined pedals in MAME, by actually just mapping it over and over until you get the plus minus that you want. Now just because my pedals have the plus as the brake and the minus as the gas doesn't mean that yours will, so you might have to experiment a little bit with that. I just want to show you one last thing. Let's say you map your pedal correctly, in my case Joy 1 Z axis minus, and you go into the game and something like this happens, where you're not touching the pedal and it's going full speed, but when you press the pedal down, it's as if you weren't touching the pedal at all. That's because this pedal is actually reversed. So let me pause the game, show you how to fix that. Press tab and go to analog controls, go to pedal 1 reverse. You notice I have it on. You just set that to off, go back into the game, and now it's working as it should. And in some cases you might have to set it to on. It depends on your pedals and how they're set up in Windows. So just keep that in mind. I find it easier if you are confused to do one pedal at a time. So start with the gas pedal, make sure nothing's mapped to the brake, and then get that working, and then you can go in and map your brake and get everything working the way it should.
System Studios, and today I'm going to be redoing one of my old tutorials that could have been done a little better. So, and that is how to set up your 360 controller for Project 64. Now, first, before you do anything, you have to identify. If you have a wired controller, it looks like this. If you have a wireless controller, you're going to need a special adapter right here. And after you do either one of these, the steps afterwards should be almost completely the same. Now, at the time of this video, you would have to go to microsoft.com/hardware and USB, and then Xbox 360 controller for Windows. And from here, all you have to do is choose your operating system, and then click download on the driver right here. And after that installs, you should be ready for the next part. Now, once you have that installed, you're going to plug in your 360 controller before you open Project 64. I'm running Project 64 2.1.0.1, but this step should be relatively the same on every version. Now, the way to check to make sure that your controller is connected is by pressing the center or the return. And it's not appearing because I'm recording, but you should see like a little Xbox symbol pop up somewhere roughly around the middle of the screen. So after you do that, and you see that at least one light on the controller is connected, you're going to click Options, Configure Controller Plugin. Now, make sure you're on whatever player you want to be, and this is set up differently for every player. So, for instance, if you have 4 controllers connected to your PC, then you would see 4 different controllers here. So it's pretty much for 4 controllers, trial and error. But once you do that, you select the controller you want, and then for the D-pad, everything at this point is pretty much up to however you want to do it. But my setting is for the D-pad is the D-pad on the Xbox controller. So you click it and just press up on the D-pad, click that, then down, click that, then left, that, then right. As you see, it's already, I'll set it to defaults. There we go. That way you can see how it looks. The name right here may differ depending on the controller you have. Mine is an Afterglow 360 controller. But as I said before, up, then down, then left, then right. Analog stick, obviously you'd probably use the left joystick, so you just press up, then down on it, then left, and then right. Take a look. Most of the time it'll say X-axis, which means left and right. Up and down should say Y-axis. Up being plus, down being minus, and same goes for left to right, except left minus, right plus. And then the C button, you can go ahead and do more likely the right thumbstick, so press up, down, left, right. Now you'll see for this right joystick it's actually a little different. It'll say for up Y rotation minus, Y rotation plus, but the left to right is still the same. I'm not too quite sure on that, but hey. B and A, that one's iffy because the way the N64 controller was, I just set it up to be A to be my actual A button and B to be my actual B button. L and R, you can either do the bumpers or the triggers. I like to use the bumpers for the L and R buttons. And then for the Z, I use the right trigger, simply because when holding an Xbox controller, generally your thumb would be here, your right hand would control this part, and then your right index finger would be on the Z button in the back. So that's what I do, and then click start, press your start button, obviously, and after that you can go ahead and click save. If you want, I just save it to my ROMs folder. Just save it as anything. I'm just going to call this 360 controller 1, in case you set up multiple. And that way, in case, because sometimes it does bug out and it forgets things, make sure you're selected controller, and then click load, and then just load it. So, This has been Jacob Bender. Thank you for watching. I just really wanted to redo this video since my first one was done actually quite poorly. So thank you guys for watching, and sorry about the delay in videos at that. Don't worry, I'll be getting back into making videos soon. Just wanted to redo this video. So thank you guys for watching. Have a good day. Don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe, and I shall see you guys in my next video. This is Jacob Bender.
And now you want to connect your controller. And now you want to connect your controller. So you go to options and input. Automatically, if you have your joystick control plugged in, it should pop up right here under the name. Mine says a P880. And to set all the buttons up, it should be automatic already, but if not, you're gonna grab your controller in your hand and set up the buttons exactly how you want. Here's left, up, right, down, select start BA, auto fire B, auto fire A. So you're gonna set up. So you have a timer right here, so you gotta hurry up and do it. So left, you're gonna press left. Up, press up. Right, down. Find a button for select. Find a button for start. For B, for A. Auto fire B, auto fire A. And for this one, I pretty much just hit the space bar because it's pretty much nothing. I don't know what that means, that button is, but. So once you go through all that, when you set it up, you're gonna hit OK. So you go to
Controller configuration. Click controller 1. If you want analog, go to the upper right and select DualShock. Now you can set up your controls by clicking on any of these areas. The next thing you press will be bound as the button you're binding it to. Once you're done with all of those, click OK. Configuration.
Alright, this is a video to show you how to adjust the sensitivity and also program whether or not you want to use the trackball, or if you do have a spinner on your machine, how to set it up to use either one with a game type like Arkanoid, because Arkanoid can use either one and you can control it well, whether or not you have a spinner or no spinner. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and load up Arkanoid here, just running in our background, and you can see it's saved my state from the last time, so it's right in the middle of the game right now. So I'm going to go ahead and reset it and bring it back to the beginning. So now I just reset the game so I can pick up from a brand new game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down one player start, push right, and what I'm going to do is going to input this game, because that applies only to this game. What we're looking for, whether you're setting up the trackball or you're setting up the spinner, we're going to look for dial analog here. Dial analog is actually the controller that moves the paddle guide back and forth. So I'm going to highlight that. Right now it says NA, so it's not programmed at all. I wanted to start out from scratch here. And I'm just going to clear it out, and I'm going to move the trackball to the left or to the right. And you're going to see it's going to assign mouse 1X. It just sees this as a mouse, and it's just really a big giant mouse. So we got that set up for mouse 1X. And you don't need to set the analog decrease or increase, so automatically sets that. And now I'm going to go ahead and play the game. Let me go back down here, return to game. I'm going to credit it up. Start it out here. We're going to see how sensitive the trackball is and how well it controls. And I'll show you how to modify that as well. If you want to make it more sensitive, less sensitive. So anyway, I can move back and forth here. And it takes a considerable amount of movement. But if you want it to be sensitive, more sensitive, or less sensitive, you can actually get in and change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave the game run. You can pause it if you want. But hold down one player start to push right again. We're going to go into analog controls. This is where you can configure how often the machine actually reads what you're doing on the trackball, and also how sensitive it is every time it reads that position. So mainly what we're going to mess with is the sensitivity, because the speed doesn't really do that much. I think you probably leave it set somewhere in the middle or whatever the factory default is, and it should be good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. It was set at 30, so I'm going to set it at 15. You can see that's taking that sensitivity and cutting it in half. So what we're going to do now is return to prior menu. I'm going to return to the game and start another game here. Credit it up, start it out, and we'll get started again. And I'll show you, if you can see my hand, how much I'm moving it. It should take twice as much movement now to make it go that same distance. So now when I'm moving back and forth, you can see I'm moving much slower. I got to move that trackball a lot before it moves where I want it to. So that'll make it less sensitive. Now if I want to get in and turn it up even more sensitive than it starts out, I go back to analog controls, hit my enter button, which is the third button on your second player, and I'm going to go back to dial sensitivity, and I'm going to crank it up. Let's move it up to, what was set at 30 initially, so let's move it to 60. And we're going to go back in, and you're going to see how much faster my guy moves there. I got to credit it. Start over again here. Probably be faster to pause the game, maybe, but I just want to show that you can do it, just do it on the fly here. Once you get it set where you want it to be, you can leave the machine, you can exit out of the game, and it'll save these settings, so you don't have to come back in. But you can see now how sensitive my trackball is. Okay? Alright. So anyway, if we want to, let me bring this menu back up again. If I like that setting, I can just leave it there. When I exit out of the game, it's going to save it. But what I'm going to do, I don't have a spinner on this machine, but you're going to set it up just the same way. If you want to play this with a spinner, which is actually the original control that it played with, you're going to go under input this game again, which is just for this individual game. We're going to scroll down where it says dial analog. You're going to clear that out, and then you're just going to turn your spinner. When you turn the spinner, it's going to enter a different number there, probably mouse 2x or 3x or 4x, depending on if you have light guns and things like that. These are just the numbers that the machine assigns to each analog control, whether it's a trackball, spinner, light guns, steering wheel, or even an analog joystick if you have that on your order. But you're just going to clear this out. You're going to turn the spinner. It's going to automatically set it to that. You're going to exit out, and you'll be good to go. So that's basically how you set up your trackball, and you can set it up for just about any game that uses analog control. You can change it from the trackball to the spinner or vice versa, and you can get up and get playing really fast and configure the game exactly how you want it to be played. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm going to show you how to set up the arcade guns, light guns, using MAME. Basically, we start by loading the arcade guns pro utility, and I'm on device player 1 right here.
settings, you can press the default key at default to trigger small button, large button. Now, if we go over to our file explorer, I went into computer, my iDrive, and main FX, main UI FX64 version of main. Now, in this main directory, we will see the executable, and we are going to look for the INI file so that we can update our controller settings. So sometimes the main INI is in the main directory here, other times it's in the INI directory, depending on which version of main you're using. So let's open this up, make it full screen. Okay. You can see my ROM path, and if I scroll down, we're going to look for mouse set to 1, joystick set to 1, light gun set to 1. I don't enable multi-keyboard because I don't have multiple keyboards, and I found that it doesn't work as well when you enable it if you don't have multiple keyboards. So, even if you do have multiple keyboards, just leave it set to 0. Multi-mouse set to 1, so you can have multiple trackballs, mice, and light guns. Off-screen reload needs to be set to 1. Let's scroll down a little further. We will see light gun device set to light gun, and mouse device set to mouse. Scroll down a little further, and multi-threading I always set it to 0. I've had problems with controllers in general, not just the arcade guns controller, being laggy. So they may have fixed in later versions of the main, but this is the latest one. I still have some troubles enabling multi-threading. I have 3 monitors, so I'm setting the screen view to display 2 so that my main loads in the center display. Let's scroll down a little further, and we are going to look at the very bottom, I believe. And I could be wrong. Oh yes, here it is. Dual light gun, set to 0. This needs to be set to 0 because this was meant for Action Lab light guns back in the past. If you set this to 1, it'll cause some strange controller mapping, so just need to set to 0. Now let's go ahead and close this INI file, and if you made changes, make sure to save it before you close it. I'm going to load my main UI FX64. Now this is one version of main. You can also use main UI, main plus, main, just regular main. They all should be configured the same. And I'm going to show you how to set up Area 51 with one arcade gun, and I can also show you how to do both. 2 or more light guns. Version 2. Okay. Wait a second until it loads. I am going to now press the Tab key on my keyboard, which opens this menu. And you can do input in general, but there's a lot of controller options for all the games in MAME. So for this, or for in general, you might just want to do input this game. Now this is already set up, and I will redo it so I can show you. So this is set up for 1 gun, because this is player 1, button 1, which is the trigger in this game. We care about light gun X analog and light gun Y analog. The decrement and increment options should be set to none. They are mostly keyboard options if you want to move the cursor around, but it can also cause some problems if you set them wrong. So by setting them to none, you just have to press enter on your keyboard, and then it's waiting for an input. And sorry, let's try this again. I was on the wrong thing. Player 1 start. I did not want that. Okay, set it back. So go down to this. If I press enter on the keyboard, then press escape key, it will revert it back to what it was. And if I do that same thing again, enter, escape, it'll say none. So you might have to toggle a few times. So player 1, button 1. What I'm gonna do, take my light gun, press enter on the keyboard on button 1, enter. Then I'm going to pull the trigger on the gun by pointing the gun at the ground so I don't hit anything. Now it will set it to gun to button 0. And I can do the same thing again so you can see the screen. Now I did it twice. Now there's 2 of them. Don't want that. So enter, escape. Enter, pull the trigger. Okay, that worked. Now for these other ones, are all set to none. Make sure to set player 2 options if you only have one light gun to none. You do that by pressing enter, escape. You may have to do it twice until it says none. So this is a little tricky with the gun X, 2X, and the gun 2Y. Now I'm going to set the light gun X analog, which means I need to move my gun across the horizontal plane of my screen so that MAME can pick up the fact that I moved my light gun on the X axis. So press enter on that, hold the gun very steadily and move it across the screen, and then set it to gun X, 2X. Great. Okay, now I'm going to go to light gun Y analog, press enter, and we'll point the gun kind of at the bottom of the screen and then move it up very slowly. And it picked up the X axis, so I need to do it again. Press enter, escape, and then enter again so that I can reconfigure it. And this time I almost got it, but it wasn't quite right because it picked up both of the X and Y. So let's hit enter, escape, and then back up just a little bit. And there it is. Picked up the Y axis. So now I have my button 1 set to button 0, which is the trigger, and my X axis set to X, and my Y axis is to Y. So I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard to get out of this menu, and I can fire up the game. Press some quarters in it, push player 1 start, and you can see it's following me. I'm just going to wait until the game starts. Reload. Well, it works great. Thanks, guys. Set up the
Double click it, input configuration. So for this you're going to want to make the mapped out to the control pad. The ups, downs, left and right are used the left and stick. These will be something different, but just for this example, people can space. So up, for this you're going to want to make double click it, input configuration. So for this you're going to want to make all the controls to the mapped out to the control pad. The ups, downs, left and right I use the left analog stick. These will be something different, but just for this example I defaulted them into space. So up, left, down, right. So now to work this out you've got to look at your buttons on your controller and your buttons on the right hand side of the screen. It's a little bit confusing because they're a bit messed around, but they're basically the opposites of each other. So B would be A would be B, Y would be X, and X would be Y. Start would be start, select would be select, left and right I just used the left bumper, right bumper, and don't worry about these, just hit OK.
This is a quick video showing you how to adjust the sensitivity for spinner in MAME so that it feels more like the original arcade game. I'm going to use Tempest as my example here. I put the MAME cheat on. I'm going to use Tempest as my example here. I put the MAME cheat on, which is when none of the enemies are actually hitting me. On the default setting, you'll notice that it moves way too fast. It even looks like it's moving backwards sometimes. That's because the sensitivity on the default setting is way too high for this game. So to fix that, press Tab, go down to Analog Controls. You can ignore digital dial speed, that's if you're using a keyboard or a joystick or something, instead of an actual analog device like a mouse or a spinner. So we go down to dial sensitivity, and that's what we want to reduce, so 100 is way too high. But we need to know what number we want to actually set that at to feel like the original Tempest arcade game. In the description, I'm providing a link to arcadecontrols.com, and they have an entire page dedicated to turn counts of spinners on popular games. Basically what the turn count is the number of intervals recorded per one turn of the spinner. If you look on that page under Tempest, it says that the